The pounding on Helen's door at 2:47 a.m. wasn't just desperate, it was dying. She opened it to find a beautiful Korean stranger bleeding out on her porch, his white shirt soaked crimson, begging her not to call the police. Against every screaming instinct, she pulled him inside and dug a bullet from his ribs with shaking hands, not knowing this one choice would mark her for death. When she woke the next morning, he was gone, but 100 armed men in black suits surrounded her house like a cage she'd never escape. The pounding on the door shattered the silence like a gunshot. Helen jerked awake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The clock on her nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. Rain hammered against the windows of her small Portland home, and thunder rumbled in the distance. She lay frozen in bed listening. The pounding came again. Harder this time, more desperate. "Please." The voice was male, rough, barely audible over the storm. "Help me." Every instinct screamed at her to stay in bed, to call the police, to pretend she heard nothing. But Helen was a nurse. She had spent 3 years working night shifts at Portland General Hospital, and that voice carried something she recognized instantly. Pain. Real, urgent, dying pain. She grabbed her robe and hurried down the stairs, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. Through the peephole, she could barely make out a figure slumped against her doorframe. Lightning flashed, and for one brief moment she saw him clearly. She saw a man. He was tall, dark hair plastered to his face, and blood. So much blood spreading across his white shirt like spilled wine. "I'm going to regret this," she whispered, unlocking the door. The moment she cracked it open, he practically fell into her arms. Helen stumbled backward under his weight, shocked by how solid and heavy he was. She managed to guide him toward her living room couch, her mind already shifting into emergency mode. "What happened?" she demanded, flipping on the lights. That's when she really saw him. He was beautiful in a dangerous way that made her breath catch. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, skin pale from blood loss. His eyes, dark and intense, locked onto hers with a focus that seemed impossible for someone in his condition. "Gunshot," he managed, his accent thick. "Korean," she realized. "Left side, bullet still inside." Helen's training kicked in immediately. She grabbed scissors from her kitchen and cut away his shirt, revealing a muscled chest and the angry wound just below his ribs. Blood pulsed steadily from the hole. He needed a hospital, needed surgery, needed things she couldn't provide in her living room. "I need to call an ambulance," she said, reaching for her phone. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals, no police. Please. You could die." "I will die if you call them." His eyes burned into hers. "Please, I'm begging you." Something in his voice, in his desperation, made her pause. This was insane, completely insane. But she found herself nodding. "Don't move," she ordered, running upstairs to grab her medical bag. He was beautiful in a dangerous way that made her breath catch. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, skin pale from blood loss. His eyes, dark and intense, locked onto hers with a focus that seemed impossible for someone in his condition. "Gunshot," he managed, his accent thick. "Korean," she realized. "Left side, bullet still inside." Helen's training kicked in immediately. She grabbed scissors from her kitchen and cut away his shirt, revealing a muscled chest and the angry wound just below his ribs. Blood pulsed steadily from the hole. He needed a hospital, needed surgery, needed things she couldn't provide in her living room. "I need to call an ambulance," she said, reaching for her phone. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals, no police. Please." You could die. I will die if you call them. His eyes burned into hers. Please, I'm begging you. Something in his voice, in his desperation, made her pause. This was insane, completely insane. But she found herself nodding. Don't move, she ordered, running upstairs to grab her medical bag. Her hands shook as she gathered supplies. She had treated gunshot wounds before, but always in a sterile hospital with a full surgical team. Never alone in her living room with a stranger who refused to explain why armed men might be hunting him. When she returned, he was watching her with those intense, dark eyes. Despite his injury, despite the blood soaking into her couch, he looked at her like he was memorizing every detail of her face. This is going to hurt, she warned, preparing the local anesthetic she kept for emergencies. I can handle pain. His voice was steady, confident. What's your name? Helen. She cleaned the wound, working quickly. And you need to stay quiet so I can concentrate. Hyun-Woo, he said anyway. It means bright hero in Korean. Well, bright hero, you're about to feel a lot less heroic. She injected the anesthetic around the wound site and waited for it to take effect. Her hands were steadier now, muscle memory taking over. She had done this before. She could do it again. Why me? She asked as she worked. Why my door? Your porch light was on. You looked safe. Safe? You brought danger right to my doorstep. I know. Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. I'm sorry. Helen used forceps to probe the wound, searching for the bullet. Hyun-Woo tensed but didn't cry out. His jaw clenched, muscles in his neck standing out like steel cables. But he stayed perfectly still. Most men would be screaming. You're either very brave or very stupid, she muttered. Can it be both? Despite everything, she almost smiled. She found the bullet lodged against his rib, carefully extracted it, and dropped the bloody piece of metal into a dish. The metallic clink seemed too loud in the quiet room. Got it, she announced, beginning to clean and stitch the wound. You're lucky. A few inches to the right and you'd be dead. Luck had nothing to do with it. I'm too stubborn to die. She glanced up at his face and found him staring at her again with that unnerving intensity. Heat crept up her neck. This was professional. She was helping a patient. Nothing more. But the way he looked at her didn't feel professional at all. You have gentle hands, he said softly, like an angel. Angels don't perform surgery in living rooms at 3 a.m, she replied, focusing on her stitches. And patients don't usually flirt while bleeding out. Who says I'm flirting? Your eyes. They haven't left my face since I started working. Can you blame me? You're beautiful. Helen's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. She had heard compliments before, but something about the way he said it, low and rough and utterly sincere, sent shivers down her spine. You're delirious from blood loss, she said firmly, tying off the last stitch. I'm perfectly clear-headed, and you're still beautiful. She bandaged the wound with more force than necessary, trying to ignore the way her pulse raced. This man was trouble. Everything about him screamed danger. The expensive watch on his wrist, the tattoo she'd glimpsed on his shoulder, intricate and dark. The way he'd said no hospitals with the certainty of someone who had good reason to avoid them. Done, she announced, stepping back. You need antibiotics, rest, and probably a priest to pray for your stupid decisions. Will you pray for me? His lips curved into a slight smile. I'll pray that you leave and never come back. But even as she said it, something in her chest tightened at the thought. Hyun-Woo tried to sit up and immediately went pale. She caught him, her hands on his bare shoulders, and the contact sent electricity shooting through her body. His skin was warm despite the blood loss, and beneath her palms she could feel the steady beat of his heart. "Easy," she whispered. "You need to rest." "I can't stay. They'll come looking." "Who?" He met her eyes, and she saw something dark swimming in those depths. "People you don't want to meet." "Then why did you come here?" Her voice came out shakier than she intended. "Because I was dying and your light was on, and I thought if I had to die, maybe dying while looking at someone beautiful wouldn't be the worst way to go." Her breath caught. The rain hammered harder against the windows. Thunder boomed overhead. And in her small living room, with this dangerous stranger bleeding on her couch, Helen felt her carefully controlled life tilting sideways. "You're not going to die," she said finally. "Not on my watch." "Thank you." His hand found hers, his fingers warm and strong despite everything. "You saved my life tonight, Helen." The way he said her name, with that accent curling around the syllables, made something flutter low in her belly. This was crazy. She should make him leave. Should call someone. Should do anything except stand here holding his hand, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You should sleep," she said, gently pulling away. "I'll get you some water and pain medication." When she returned from the kitchen, he was leaning back against the couch cushions, his eyes closed. In the soft lamplight he looked younger, almost vulnerable. Blood still stained his skin despite her best efforts to clean him up. She set the water and pills on the coffee table and grabbed a blanket from the closet. As she draped it over him, his eyes opened. They stared at each other for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Something dangerous and electric and absolutely forbidden. "Rest now," she whispered. "Stay." His hand caught hers again. "Just until I fall asleep. Please." Against every ounce of common sense, she sat down on the floor beside the couch. His hand stayed wrapped around hers, warm and solid and real. Minutes passed. His breathing deepened, became steady. She should pull away, should go upstairs, should put distance between herself and this beautiful, dangerous stranger. But she didn't move. Thunder rolled outside. Rain pounded the roof. And Helen sat in her living room, holding the hand of a man she didn't know, whose blood stained her couch, who had brought danger to her doorstep with a single desperate knock. She must have dozed off eventually because when she opened her eyes, gray morning light filtered through the windows. The rain had stopped. Birds chirped outside, and Hyun-Woo was gone. Helen jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. The blanket lay folded neatly on the couch. The dishes she'd used were washed and stacked in her kitchen. On her coffee table sat a thick envelope and a note written in strong, decisive handwriting. "Thank you for saving me. This doesn't cover what I owe you. I'll find a way to repay you properly. Stay safe, beautiful angel. H.W." Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside were stacks of $100 bills. More money than she made in 3 months of nursing. She should be angry. Should be terrified. Should throw this away and forget everything that happened. Instead, she pressed the note to her chest and walked to her front window to open the curtains. Then she screamed. Her small, quiet street was lined with black SUVs. Men in dark suits stood everywhere. On her lawn, by her mailbox, across the street, next to her car. She counted 10, then 20, then lost track. At least 100 armed men surrounded her house. One of them, older with silver hair and sharp eyes, stood directly in front of her porch. He saw her in the window and bowed slightly, his hand pressed to his chest in a gesture of respect. Helen's phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. Hello? Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Don't be afraid. Hyun-Woo's voice, stronger now, filled her ear. They're there to protect you. You saved my life last night. That makes you important to me, and what's important to me needs to be kept safe. Who are you? She breathed. A pause. Then low and serious. Someone who's about to turn your whole world upside down. I'll come back soon, Helen. We have a lot to talk about. The line went dead. Helen stood at her window, staring at the army of men outside her door, her heart racing, her mind spinning, knowing with absolute certainty that her quiet, normal life had just ended. And the most terrifying part? Some small, reckless part of her couldn't wait to see him again. Helen couldn't go to work. She couldn't even leave her house. Every time she approached her front door, one of the men in black suits would politely but firmly suggest she stay inside for her safety. By noon, her phone had 17 missed calls from the hospital asking where she was. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had knocked 3 times asking if everything was okay. And Helen was pacing her living room like a caged animal. This is insane, she muttered, pulling back the curtain again. The men were still there. Still watching. Still waiting. A knock at the door made her jump, but this knock was different. Controlled. Confident. She knew it was him before she even looked through the peephole. Hyun-Woo stood on her porch in a perfectly tailored black suit, looking nothing like the bleeding, desperate man from last night. His dark hair was styled back from his face. His skin had regained its color. Only the careful way he held himself, favoring his left side slightly, gave away that he'd been shot less than 24 hours ago. He was devastatingly handsome. Helen hated how fast her heart beat as she opened the door. You, she said, trying to sound angry instead of breathless. You need to call off your army and let me live my life. May I come in? His voice was smooth, polite. We should talk. We should talk? You disappeared, left me a suspicious amount of cash, and surrounded my house with armed men. Talking seems a little late. I know, and I'm sorry. He stepped closer and she caught his scent. Expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. But I couldn't leave you unprotected. Not after what you did for me. I don't need protection. I need normal. Normal ended the moment you opened your door last night. His dark eyes held hers. Please, Helen, let me explain. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. He walked into her living room, and suddenly the space felt smaller, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. He moved carefully, she noticed, and guilt pricked at her conscience. How's the wound? She asked, her nurse instincts overriding her anger. Healing well, thanks to your skill. He turned to face her. You saved my life. I need you to understand how rare that is, how important. Who are you, really? He was quiet for a moment, studying her face like he was deciding how much truth she could handle. I run an organization in Seattle, a powerful one. We control certain business interests along the West Coast. Business interests, she repeated flatly. You mean illegal things? I mean survival, protection, order in a world that has very little. He took a step closer. I'm not a good man, Helen. I won't lie to you about that. But I'm fair, loyal, And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours? No. Another step closer. But you're important to me now. You could have called the police last night. Could have let me die. Instead, you risked yourself to save a stranger. That means something. Her back pressed against the wall. She hadn't even realized she'd been backing away from him. He stood close now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The men outside, he continued, his voice dropping lower. They'll stay until I'm sure my enemies won't come looking for you. Last night I was ambushed by a rival group. They'll want to know who helped me. I can't let them find you. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. His hand came up and she thought he might touch her face, but he stopped himself. There's a difference. For how long? As long as necessary. Anger flared in her chest. I have a job. A life. You can't just decide to control everything. I'm trying to keep you alive. Frustration edged into his voice. Do you understand what these people would do if they found out you helped me? They'd hurt you just to send me a message. Then maybe you should have died somewhere else. The words came out harsher than she intended. His jaw tightened, something flickering across his face that looked almost like hurt. You're right, he said quietly. I brought danger to your door. That's on me. But I can't undo it now. All I can do is make sure that danger never touches you. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She studied his face, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd turned her life upside down, and felt her anger wavering. I need to call my job, she said finally. Tell them something. Already handled. You're on paid medical leave for the next 2 weeks. Family emergency. You can't just arrange my life without asking me. I'm trying to protect it. He stepped back, giving her space, and she immediately missed his closeness. I know this is overwhelming. I know you didn't ask for any of this. But please, Helen, trust me for just a little while. Why should I trust you? I don't even know you. Then let me change that. His eyes softened. Spend time with me. Let me show you I'm more than just the worst night of your life. Her breath caught. There was something in the way he looked at her, intense and focused and hungry, that made heat pool low in her belly. This is crazy, she whispered. I know. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. But sometimes crazy is exactly what we need. Before she could respond, her stomach growled loudly. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Hyun-Woo's smile widened. Let me cook for you, he offered. Please, as an apology. You cook? I'm full of surprises. She should say no, should kick him out, should demand her life back. But standing in her living room with morning sunlight streaming through the windows and this impossible man looking at her like she was something precious, Helen found herself nodding. Fine, but I'm watching you. You try anything suspicious and I'm calling the police. Fair enough. She led him to her small kitchen, and he immediately started opening cabinets, taking inventory of her ingredients. His movements were efficient, confident. He'd clearly done this before. You don't have much Korean food, he observed, but I can work with this. I usually just eat whatever's quick after work. That's sad. Food should be enjoyed, not rushed. He pulled out eggs, vegetables, rice from her pantry. Sit. Let me take care of you. The command in his voice sent shivers down her spine. She sat at her small kitchen table, watching as he moved around her space like he belonged there. Despite his injury, he worked smoothly, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. Where did you learn to cook? she asked. My mother. Before she died, she taught me everything she knew. His voice went soft. She said a man who can't feed himself is half a man. I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago. He cracked eggs into a pan. What about your family? Are they still in Ethiopia? Yes. My parents and 2 younger brothers. I came here for nursing school 5 years ago and stayed. Do you miss them? Every day. The admission came easier than she expected. But I wanted to build something of my own. Sending money home helps more than being there. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. My parents came from Korea with nothing, built everything from the ground up. I understand wanting to make them proud. They fell into comfortable conversation as he cooked. He asked about her work, her life, her dreams. And somehow talking to this dangerous stranger felt natural. Easy. Like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. When he placed a plate in front of her, the food looked and smelled amazing. Fried rice with vegetables, perfectly seasoned eggs, kimchi he'd somehow created from her limited ingredients. This is incredible, she said after the first bite. Where have you been all my life? Getting shot, apparently, so I could meet you. She laughed despite herself. That's a terrible pickup line. But it worked. You're smiling. He was right. She was smiling. And worse, she was enjoying his company. This was dangerous in a completely different way than guns and rival gangs. This was the kind of danger that made her heart race and her defenses crumble. They ate together, and with each passing minute, Helen felt herself falling under his spell. The way he listened when she talked. The intensity of his focus. The small smiles he gave her that made her feel like the only person in the world. After lunch, he insisted on cleaning up. She watched him move around her kitchen, domestic and dangerous all at once, and something warm bloomed in her chest. Let me check your wound, she said when he finished. Make sure there's no infection. His eyes darkened. All right. He followed her to the living room and carefully removed his jacket and dress shirt. In the afternoon light, his body was even more impressive than she remembered. Defined muscles, smooth skin, that intricate tattoo curling over his shoulder and down his arm. Her hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped the bandage. The wound looked good. Clean. Healing well. You're a fast healer, she murmured, gently pressing around the stitches. I'm motivated. His voice was rough. The faster I heal, the more time I can spend with you. Her eyes flicked up to his face. He was watching her with that intense gaze again, and suddenly the air between them felt thick, charged. Hyun-Woo, she started but didn't know how to finish. His hand came up, cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and she stopped breathing. Tell me to stop, he whispered, leaning closer. Tell me you don't feel this too. But she couldn't, because she did feel it. This impossible, reckless attraction that had been building since the moment she'd opened her door. I barely know you, she breathed. Then let me show you who I am. His lips met hers, and the world exploded into sensation. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving her a chance to pull away. But when she didn't, when she leaned into him instead, it deepened into something hungry and desperate. His good arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him. She could feel the heat of his skin, the steady beat of his heart, the barely controlled desire in the way he held her. Her hands slid up his chest, careful of his injury and tangled in his hair. He kissed like a man starving, like she was air and he'd been drowning. His tongue swept into her mouth, tasting, exploring, claiming. She moaned against his lips, and he groaned in response, the sound vibrating through both their bodies. Helen, he murmured against her mouth. Beautiful, perfect Helen. His lips moved to her jaw, her neck, finding sensitive spots that made her gasp. Her head fell back, giving him better access, and his teeth grazed her pulse point. Heat flooded through her body, pooling between her thighs. This was insane. They'd known each other for barely a day. But it felt like she'd been waiting for him her entire life. His hand slid under her shirt, warm against her skin, and she arched into his touch. He pulled back slightly, his breathing ragged, his eyes dark with desire. "Tell me to stop," he said again, but it sounded more like a plea than an offer. "Don't stop," she whispered. "Please don't stop." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. He kissed her again, harder this time, walking her backward until her legs hit the couch. They tumbled onto it together, his body covering hers, and she'd never felt so alive. His hands explored her curves while her fingers traced the muscles of his back. Every touch, every kiss, every breathless moment built the fire between them higher. She could feel how much he wanted her, hard against her hip, and it made her dizzy with need. "I want you," he growled against her throat. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you. Tell me you want me too." "I want you," she admitted, her voice shaky with desire. "God help me, I want you." His hand slid higher under her shirt, and she was about to lose herself completely when her phone rang, loud and shrill, shattering the moment. They both froze, breathing hard. The phone kept ringing. "Ignore it," he murmured, his lips finding hers again. But reality was crashing back. Helen gently pushed against his chest, and he immediately pulled back, giving her space. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands, her friend Keisha from work. "Hello?" Her voice came out breathless. "Girl, what is going on? There are men in suits all over your neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson called me freaking out. Are you okay?" Helen looked at Hyun-Woo, who was watching her with dark, hungry eyes, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Was she okay? She just made out with a Korean Mafia boss on her couch. Nothing about this was okay. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just some family security issues. Nothing to worry about." "Security issues? Helen, what aren't you telling me?" "I'll explain later, I promise. I have to go." She hung up before Keisha could ask more questions. Silence filled the room, heavy with unfinished desire. "I should go," Hyun-Woo said quietly, though his eyes said the opposite. "Before I do something we're not ready for." "Yeah," she agreed, though her body screamed in protest. Probably smart. He stood, wincing slightly, and she immediately shifted back into nurse mode, helping him re-wrap his bandage and put his shirt back on. Her fingers lingered on his skin longer than necessary. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said at her door, "to check on you." "To check on me? Or because you can't stay away?" A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "Both." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her once more, slow and deep and full of promise. When he pulled away, her knees felt weak. "Lock the door behind me," he instructed. "And Helen? Don't think too hard about this. Some things are meant to be complicated." He left, and she watched through the window as he spoke briefly with the silver-haired man before climbing into a black SUV. The vehicle pulled away, but the guards remained. Helen touched her lips, still tingling from his kisses, and sank onto her couch. Her entire body hummed with unsatisfied desire. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape, should be doing anything except counting the minutes until she saw him again. But as night fell and she lay in bed, all she could think about was the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd kissed her, the way her body had responded to his touch, like she'd been made just for him. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sleep well, beautiful angel. Dream of me. HW." She smiled in the darkness, her heart racing, and typed back before she could stop herself. "Already am." His response came immediately. "Then tomorrow can't come fast enough." Helen hugged her phone to her chest and closed her eyes, knowing she was falling into something dangerous and wonderful and completely unstoppable. Tomorrow. She just had to wait until tomorrow. Hyun-Woo arrived at 9 the next morning with coffee and pastries from her favorite bakery downtown. Helen hadn't told him which bakery she liked. He'd figured it out somehow, which should have concerned her, but instead made her heart flutter. "How did you know?" she asked, accepting the still warm almond croissant. "I have my ways." His smile was mysterious. "And I pay attention to what matters." They fell into an easy rhythm. He visited every day, sometimes for hours, always bringing something: food, flowers, books he thought she'd like. They talked about everything: her childhood in Addis Ababa, his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, the dreams they'd both sacrificed to survive. The guards remained, but Helen hardly noticed them anymore. Her whole world had narrowed to this intense, magnetic man who looked at her like she was everything. By the fourth day, the tension between them was unbearable. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every shared glance lasted too long. They were circling each other like magnets, fighting their pull. "Come to Seattle with me," he said one evening as they finished dinner. He'd cooked again, this time an elaborate Korean meal that had taken hours. "Let me show you my world." "Hyun-Woo, I can't just leave." "Why not? You're on leave. My men have confirmed no threats in the area. You'd be safer with me than anywhere else." He took her hand across the table. "And I'm going insane only seeing you here. I want to share things with you. Beautiful things." The raw honesty in his voice melted her resistance. "For how long?" "A weekend. Just 2 days. If you hate it, I'll bring you straight back." She should say no. This was moving too fast. But when she looked into his dark eyes and saw the hope there, the desire, the genuine affection, her answer surprised even herself. "Okay. Yes." His smile was brilliant. "Pack a bag. We leave tomorrow morning." That night, Helen lay awake wondering what she'd agreed to, but excitement outweighed her fear. She wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted to see where this impossible connection could lead. The next morning, a sleek black car arrived. Hyun-Woo held the door open for her, looking devastating in casual clothes that somehow made him even more attractive. The drive to Seattle took 3 hours, and they spent every minute talking, laughing, his hand finding hers and not letting go. His penthouse was on the top floor of a glass tower overlooking Elliott Bay. The view was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city sprawling below, water glittering in the distance, mountains rising beyond. "This is incredible," she breathed, walking to the windows. "It's just a place." He came up behind her, close enough that she could feel his heat. "But having you here makes it feel different, better." She turned, and suddenly they were inches apart. The wanting in his eyes matched the ache in her chest. "Hyun-Woo," she whispered. "I'm trying to be patient," he said roughly. trying to do this right. But every time I look at you, all I want is to touch you, kiss you, make you mine in every way possible." Her breath caught. "Then why don't you?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Because once I start, I won't want to stop. And I need to know you want this as much as I do. I want this." The admission came easily now. "I want you." He kissed her then, deep and hungry, backing her against the window. His hands roamed her body while hers tugged at his shirt, needing to feel his skin. They stumbled toward his bedroom, shedding clothes along the way, leaving a trail of fabric across expensive floors. When they finally tumbled onto his massive bed, both breathing hard, Helen felt a moment of nervousness. This was real. This was happening. "Hey." He cupped her face gently. "We can stop any time. Just say the word." "I don't want to stop," she said firmly. "I want all of you." His kiss was softer this time, reverent as his hands explored her curves. He took his time, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her arch into his touch. His lips followed the path of his hands, kissing her neck, her shoulders, lower. When his mouth closed around her breast, she cried out, fingers tangling in his hair. He lavished attention on her body like she was something precious, something to be worshipped. Every touch built the fire higher until she was burning, desperate for more. "Please," she whimpered. "Hyun-Woo, please. Tell me what you need," he murmured against her skin. "You. I need you." He positioned himself above her, his eyes locked on hers, dark with desire, but also something deeper. Something that looked like affection, like care. "You're sure?" he asked one more time. "I've never been more sure of anything." He entered her slowly, carefully, watching her face for any sign of discomfort. She gasped at the stretch, the fullness, the perfect feeling of him inside her. For a moment they stayed still, adjusting, breathing together. Then he began to move, and thought became impossible. Every thrust sent waves of pleasure through her body. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, matching his rhythm. His name fell from her lips like a prayer. "You feel incredible," he groaned against her neck. "Perfect, like you were made for me." "Faster," she begged. "Please, faster." He obliged, his hips moving harder, deeper, driving them both towards something explosive. She could feel pressure building, tightening, ready to snap. His hand slid between their bodies, finding the sensitive spot that made her see stars. "Come for me," he commanded. "Let me feel you." The combination of his voice, his touch, his body moving inside hers pushed her over the edge. Pleasure crashed through her in waves so intense she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. She cried out his name as her body shattered. He followed moments later, groaning low and deep as he found his own release, his body tensing above hers before relaxing completely. They lay tangled together, breathing hard, sweat cooling on their skin. He rolled to his side, pulling her against his chest, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "That was," she started, then laughed breathlessly. "I don't even have words." "I do." He tilted her face up to his. "That was everything. You are everything." They made love twice more that night, each time more intense than the last. Learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure, building something between them that felt bigger than just physical desire. In the quiet moments between, they talked. He told her about his childhood, how his father had built an empire from nothing, how the weight of that legacy sometimes crushed him. She shared her fears about never being enough, about the pressure to succeed for her family back home. You're more than enough, he murmured, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. You're extraordinary. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to save strangers, smart enough to succeed in a foreign country, strong enough to handle my world without breaking. That's more than most people could say. She fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer and more cherished than she'd ever felt in her life. The next 2 days were perfect. He showed her Seattle, taking her to places tourists never saw. Private restaurants where they ate incredible food, a hidden garden overlooking the Sound, a small Korean market where he bought ingredients and taught her to make kimchi in his kitchen, laughing when she added too much spice. They barely left the penthouse, too caught up in each other. Every moment seemed to lead back to his bedroom, to tangled sheets and breathless cries, and the feeling of belonging to someone completely. On their last evening, they sat on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His arm was around her shoulders, and she leaned against his chest, perfectly content. I don't want this to end, she admitted quietly. It doesn't have to. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Stay with me. Not just tonight. Stay. Her heart raced. Hyun-Woo, that's crazy. My life is in Portland. Your life could be here. With me. He turned her to face him, his eyes serious. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. But I've never felt like this about anyone. You make me want to be better. To build something real instead of just surviving. I'm scared, she confessed. This is all so much. I'm scared too. His thumb brushed her cheek. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed urgently. He frowned, checking it, and his entire demeanor changed. His body tensed, his jaw tightened. What's wrong? Alarm spiked through her. We need to go inside, now. He pulled her up, his movements quick and controlled. Stay away from the windows. Hyun-Woo, you're scaring me. They'd barely made it through the balcony doors when the first gunshot shattered the evening silence. Glass exploded inward. Helen screamed as Hyun-Woo threw her to the floor, covering her body with his. More gunshots, more breaking glass. Chaos erupted around them. Stay down, he commanded, his voice deadly calm despite the violence. He pulled a gun from somewhere, moving with practiced efficiency. Don't move until I say. Men burst through his front door. His men, she realized, armed and ready. Shouting filled the air. More gunshots from the street below. Hyun-Woo barked orders in Korean, his entire personality shifting from gentle lover to dangerous leader. This was the man people feared, the man who controlled empires. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, silence fell. Hyun-Woo returned to her, helping her up, checking her for injuries with frantic hands. Are you hurt? Did anything hit you? I'm fine. What was that? His jaw clenched. The people who shot me, they found us. Fear turned her blood cold. Will they come back? Not tonight. My men will handle it. But his eyes were troubled. But Helen, this is my world. This is what being with me means. Danger, violence, constantly looking over your shoulder. She was shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system. But as she looked at him, at the fear in his eyes that wasn't for himself but for her, she made a decision. I'm not leaving you, she said firmly. You should. You should run as far from me as possible. I said I'm not leaving. She grabbed his face, making him look at her. I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of losing what we have. So whatever comes next, we face it together. Something broke in his expression. He kissed her desperately, like she was oxygen and he was drowning. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against her lips, "then spend forever trying to deserve me." He carried her to his bedroom, away from the shattered glass and bullet holes, and made love to her with an urgency that spoke of fear and relief and desperate need. Every touch said what words couldn't, that he needed her, wanted her, would do anything to keep her safe. Later, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, the city lights twinkling through the undamaged windows, Helen realized she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. She'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with a dangerous man, and nothing would ever be simple again. They returned to Portland the next morning, but something had shifted. The attack had made everything real. Helen moved through her house feeling like a stranger in her own life. The curtains stayed closed, the guards doubled, and Hyun-Woo barely left her side. "You don't have to babysit me," she said after 3 days of his constant presence. "I'm not babysitting. I'm protecting what's mine." His eyes were fierce. "And you are mine, Helen, whether you like it or not." The possessive statement should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat flooding through her body. "Yours," she repeated softly. "Mine." He pulled her into his lap on the couch, his hands settling on her waist. "Say it." "I'm yours." He kissed her deeply, and within minutes they were tearing at each other's clothes, desperate despite having made love just that morning. The danger had intensified everything between them. Every touch felt more urgent, every kiss more necessary. They'd just finished, both breathing hard and tangled on her living room floor, when a knock interrupted them. Hyun-Woo tensed immediately, reaching for the gun he'd started carrying. But then a female voice called out in Korean. His entire body went rigid. "Who is that?" Helen asked, pulling on her clothes quickly. "Someone from my past." His expression was unreadable. "Let me handle this." He opened the door to reveal a stunning Korean woman in an expensive dress. She was tall, elegant, with perfect makeup and an air of confidence that made Helen instantly feel inadequate in her comfortable house clothes. The woman spoke rapidly in Korean, her eyes flicking dismissively over Helen before focusing entirely on Hyun-Woo. He responded in the same language, his tone cold and firm. "English, please," Helen interrupted. "This is my house." The woman's smile was sharp. "Of course, how rude of me. I'm Seo-yeon, Hyun-Woo's fiancé." The word hit Helen like a physical blow. "Fiancé?" "Ex-fiancé," Hyun-Woo corrected harshly. "From 5 years ago." "We have no relationship, Seo-yeon. Why are you here?" "Your father sent me. He wants you back in Seattle. There are business matters that require your attention." Her eyes slid to Helen again. Private business matters. Jealousy burned hot and ugly in Helen's chest. This woman was everything she wasn't. Sophisticated. Connected to Hyun-Woo's world. Part of his past in ways Helen could never be. "I'll handle my father later," Hyun-Woo said coldly. "You need to leave." "But we should talk. Catch up. Remember what we had." Seo-yeon moved closer to him, her hand reaching for his arm. He stepped back, moving toward Helen instead. His arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against his side in a clear statement of possession. "What we had is dead. This is who I want. Only her. Now leave before I have you removed." Seo-yeon's perfect composure cracked slightly. "You're choosing this nobody over me? Over your own people?" "Watch your mouth," Hyun-Woo growled, genuine anger flashing in his eyes. "You don't get to speak about her. Ever. Your father won't approve." My father doesn't control my life anymore. He moved toward the door, clearly done with the conversation. Goodbye, Seo-yeon. The woman left with one final venomous look at Helen. When the door closed, heavy silence filled the room. You are engaged, Helen said quietly. It was arranged by our families. I broke it off years ago when I realized I'd rather be alone than trapped in a loveless marriage. He turned to her, his expression open. She means nothing to me. She's beautiful, connected, part of your world. And she's not you. He cupped her face. Do you really think I care about any of that? You saved my life, Helen. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me as a person, not just a title or a bank account. That's what matters. But doubt had planted itself in her mind. Your father wants you with her. My father wants a lot of things he won't get. His thumb brushed her cheek. Don't let her poison what we have. She wanted to believe him, but insecurity gnawed at her. She was just a nurse, an immigrant. Nothing special compared to women like Seo-yeon. Hyun-Woo must have seen the doubt in her eyes because he kissed her softly. Let me prove it to you. Come to San Francisco with me this weekend. I have business there, but I want to show you something beautiful. Show you how I see you. I don't know. Please, trust me. Against the insecurity whispering in her mind, she nodded. Okay? That weekend, he flew them to San Francisco in a private plane. The hotel suite he'd booked overlooked the Golden Gate Bridge, all luxury and breathtaking views. But Helen barely noticed the opulence. She was too caught up in her own head. What's wrong? He asked that first evening as they dressed for dinner. Nothing. Don't lie to me. He turned her to face him. Talk to me. I just keep thinking about Seo-yeon, about how she fits your life in ways I never could. Stop. His voice was firm. You're letting fear talk, not truth. What if your family never accepts me? What if I'm not enough for your world? He was quiet for a moment, then took her hand. Come with me. He led her to the suite's balcony. The city sprawled below, lights twinkling in the gathering darkness. The bridge glowed in the distance. See that? He pointed to the view. It's beautiful, right? Impressive. But do you know what I see when I look at it? He turned her to face him. Nothing. It's just scenery. But when I look at you, I see everything. Home, peace, purpose. You make me want to be better than the life my father planned for me. Hyun-Woo, I love you. The words came out raw, honest. I've probably loved you since you opened your door that night and chose to save me instead of save yourself. You're it for me, Helen. The only woman I'll ever want. Tears pricked her eyes. I love you too. So much it scares me. He kissed her deeply, desperately, and then lifted her into his arms and carried her back inside. He laid her on the bed with such gentleness it made her heart ache. Let me show you, he murmured, slowly removing her dress. Let me worship you the way you deserve. He took his time, kissing every inch of her skin, whispering words of devotion in both English and Korean. His hands mapped her body like she was treasure. His mouth followed, tasting, exploring, driving her slowly insane with need. You're so beautiful, he breathed against her stomach. Every part of you. Perfect. When he finally settled between her thighs, his mouth finding her most sensitive spot, she gasped and arched off the bed. He worked her with his tongue until she was trembling, begging, desperate for release. Come for me, beautiful, he commanded. Let me taste you. She shattered, crying out his name, and he didn't stop until she was boneless and panting. Then he kissed his way back up her body and entered her in one smooth thrust. They made love slowly, eyes locked, hands intertwined. Every movement was deliberate, intimate, full of emotion neither of them could quite name. When they climaxed together, it felt like more than just physical pleasure. It felt like souls connecting. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Helen felt her insecurities fading. This was real. What they had was real. I meant what I said, he murmured against her hair. I love you. Nothing Seo Yan or my father or anyone else says will change that. I believe you. Good. He kissed her forehead. Because you're stuck with me now. The rest of the weekend was perfect. He took her to exclusive restaurants where he fed her bites from his plate and watched her with adoring eyes. They walked across the Golden Gate Bridge hand in hand, laughing at stupid jokes. He bought her a necklace from a small jewelry store, a delicate gold chain with an Ethiopian cross. So you always have a piece of home, he explained as he fastened it around her neck. Every night, they explored each other with growing confidence and intimacy. He learned exactly how to touch her to make her melt. She discovered the spot on his neck that made him groan. They mapped each other's pleasure like a language only they spoke. On their last night, as they lay tangled in expensive sheets, her phone rang. Her mother. Helen's stomach dropped. She'd been avoiding her family's calls, knowing they'd ask questions she couldn't answer. Answer it, Hyun-Woo encouraged. I'll give you privacy. But as soon as her mother started speaking in Amharic, rapid and worried, Helen knew privacy wouldn't help. Her brother had seen posts on social media, questions about the men outside her house, rumors about who she was involved with. Is it true? Her mother demanded. Are you with a criminal? It's complicated, Mama. Complicated? Helen, we raised you better than this. Come home, now. I can't. You mean you won't? Because of this man? Because I love him. Silence. Then her mother's voice, cold and disappointed. Then you choose him over your family, over everything we taught you. The line went dead. Helen sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Hyun-Woo immediately pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered. This is my fault. No, it's mine. I made this choice. You can still go back. Still have the life they want for you. She pulled back, looking into his eyes. Is that what you want? For me to leave? God, no. But I can't ask you to sacrifice everything for me. You're not asking. I'm choosing. She wiped her tears. I'm choosing you. Us. Whatever comes next. He kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, and they made love with desperate intensity, clinging to each other like they were the only real things in an uncertain world. But as Helen fell asleep in his arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that harder choices were still ahead, and she had no idea if their love would be strong enough to survive them. The threat came exactly 1 week after they returned from San Francisco. Helen was at home, trying to work on an online nursing recertification course, when Hyun-Woo burst through her door with an urgency she'd never seen before. His face was pale, his jaw tight. Pack a bag, he ordered. Right now, we're leaving. What's happening? They know about you. My biggest enemy, Park Jae-sung. He's planning to take you to get to me. His hands shook slightly as he pulled out his phone, barking orders in Korean. We have maybe an hour before his men arrive. Terror froze her in place. This wasn't abstract danger anymore. This was real. Helen! His sharp tone snapped her out of it. Move, now! She ran upstairs, throwing clothes into a bag with trembling hands. This was her worst fear realized. She'd become a target because of him. When she came back down, the house was filled with his men. They were checking windows, setting up defensive positions, moving with military precision. Hyun-Woo was in the center of it all, commanding, focused, every inch the dangerous leader she sometimes forgot he was. "Sir, we should move her to the Seattle safe house," one of his men suggested. "No, Jae-sung has contacts there." Hyun-Woo's mind was clearly racing. "We end this tonight. If we run, he'll just keep coming." "You want to fight?" Helen's voice came out smaller than she intended. He turned to her, and for a moment, the hard mask cracked. He crossed to her in 3 strides and cupped her face. "I'm going to protect you, whatever it takes. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "I'm scared." "I know. So am I." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But I won't let him touch you. I'd burn this whole city down first." His phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression darkened further. "They're moving faster than expected. We have maybe 30 minutes. He looked at his head of security. "Get her to the secondary location, now." "I'm not leaving you." Helen protested. "You have to." "No." She grabbed his arm. "You said we face things together. I'm not running while you fight my battle." "This isn't your battle, it's mine." "It became mine the moment I opened my door for you." She stood her ground despite her fear. "I'm staying." Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or fear. "If you stay, you follow my orders exactly. No arguments." "Fine." He pulled her close, kissing her hard and fast. "If anything happens to me, there's a bag in my car with money and documents. My man Tae-ho knows how to get you out of the country. Promise me you'll run." "Nothing's going to happen to you." "Promise me." "I promise." The next 20 minutes were a blur of preparation. Hyun-Woo moved her to an interior room with no windows. He gave her a gun and showed her how to use it, his hand steady over hers despite the chaos. "Point and shoot. Don't hesitate." His eyes were intense. "But hopefully you won't need it." Then the shooting started. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, shouting in Korean and English, breaking glass. The sounds of violence filled her small house. Helen crouched in the bathroom where Hyun-Woo had left her, gripping the gun with white knuckles, praying. Time lost meaning. Every second felt like an hour. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Money and documents. "My man Tae-ho knows how to get you out of the country. Promise me you'll run." "Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." "I promise." The next 20 minutes were a blur of preparation. Hyun-Woo moved her to an interior room with no windows. He gave her a gun and showed her how to use it, his hands steady over hers despite the chaos. "Point and shoot. Don't hesitate." His eyes were intense. "But hopefully you won't need it." Then the shooting started. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, shouting in Korean and English, breaking glass. The sounds of violence filled her small house. Helen crouched in the bathroom where Hyun-Woo had left her, gripping the gun with white knuckles, praying. Time lost meaning. Every second felt like an hour. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Hyun-Woo's voice, sharp with pain. She didn't think. She moved. Against every instruction, she left her hiding spot and ran toward his voice. She found him in her kitchen, blood spreading across his shirt from a wound in his shoulder. 3 of his men were down. More enemy fighters were pushing through the back door. "Helen, no!" he shouted when he saw her. "Get back!" But she saw when he didn't. A man behind him, raising a gun, aiming for his head. She raised her own weapon and fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough. The man turned toward her instead, and in that split second of distraction, Hyun-Woo spun and took him down. More of his men flooded in. The tide turned. Within minutes, the attackers were either dead or fleeing. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing and groans of pain. Hyun-Woo crossed to her in 3 strides, his face a mask of fury and fear. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded. "You could have been killed. You were about to be shot. I can handle myself. You were supposed to stay hidden." His hands gripped her shoulders, shaking slightly. "Do you understand what would have happened if they'd got you? What they would have done before killing you? But they didn't. We're both alive. You don't understand." His voice broke. "I can't lose you. I can't. You're everything to me. If something happened to you because of my life, my choices, I couldn't survive it." Tears streamed down her face. "And you think I could survive losing you? I love you, Hyun-Woo. All of you, including the dangerous parts." He pulled her against him, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt wetness on her hair and realized he was crying too. "You're insane," he whispered. "Brave and insane and perfect. We match." Despite everything, he laughed. Then he kissed her, desperate and relieved, tasting like fear and love and survival. His men cleared the house and dealt with the aftermath while Helen tended to Hyun-Woo's shoulder wound. It was superficial, thankfully. The bullet had grazed him rather than penetrating. "You're lucky," she murmured as she bandaged him. "I know. You saved my life again." "We're even now." "No." He caught her hand. "We'll never be even. You gave me something worth living for." That night, after his men had secured the house and posted guards, after the bodies were removed and the blood cleaned, Hyun-Woo led Helen upstairs to her bedroom. They didn't speak. Words weren't necessary. He undressed her slowly, reverently, his eyes drinking in every inch of her skin like he was memorizing her. His hands trembled as they traced her curves. "I almost lost you today," he whispered. "But you didn't. I'm here." He laid her on the bed and covered her body with his own, and they made love with an intensity that stole her breath. Every touch was desperate. Every kiss said what words couldn't. Every movement of their bodies together was a promise. "I'm alive. You're alive. We're together." She cried as they moved together, overwhelmed by emotion. He kissed away her tears, whispering words of love in Korean and English, telling her she was his world, his reason, his everything. When they finally reached their peak together, it felt like more than just pleasure. It felt like rebirth, like they'd survived something that should have destroyed them and come out stronger. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Helen realized something important. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said quietly. "Of what?" "Of your world. Of the danger. I mean, I'm still scared, but I'm not going to let fear control me." She looked up at him. "Today proved I can handle this. We can handle this together." Pride shone in his eyes. "You're not just strong, Helen. You're fierce. A warrior. My equal in every way." "Your equal?" "My partner. My other half. The person I want to build a life with." He paused. "If you'll have me." Her heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that tonight made me realize life is too short to wait. Too uncertain to play it safe." He shifted, reaching for something in his pants pocket on the floor. When he turned back, he held a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the lamplight. "Marry me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. but I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I want you as my wife, my family, my forever." Tears blurred her vision. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. They made love again, slower this time, savoring every touch, every kiss, every moment of being alive and together and committed to forever. As dawn broke through her bedroom window, painting everything in shades of gold, Helen looked at the ring on her finger and the man sleeping beside her. She'd saved his life that rainy night. But somehow, in ways she was only beginning to understand, he'd saved hers too. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. His father, her family, the complications of merging their two worlds. But right now, wrapped in his arms with his ring on her finger, she'd never felt more certain of anything. This was where she belonged. With him. No matter what came next. The wedding planning was chaos. Hyun-Woo wanted to handle everything, to give her the world. Helen wanted something simple and meaningful. They compromised, deciding on a ceremony that would honor both their cultures. But first, they had to face their families. Hyun-Woo's father arrived in Portland 2 weeks after the proposal, and the meeting was tense from the start. Chairman Park was a stern man in his 60s who looked at Helen like she was an interesting but ultimately unwelcome puzzle. "You're the nurse," he said in English, his accent thick. "The one who saved my son." "Yes, sir." "And now you want to marry him." "I love him." The chairman studied her for a long moment. "My son was promised to Seo-yeon. It was an agreement between families. Important families." "Father." Hyun-Woo's voice was cold. "I told you years ago I wouldn't honor that arrangement. Helen is who I choose. Accept it or don't. Either way, I'm marrying her." Silence hung heavy in the room. Then, surprisingly, the chairman smiled slightly. "You have your mother's fire. She married me despite my family's objections, too." He turned back to Helen. "My son is not an easy man to love. He's stubborn, dangerous, complicated." "I know." "And you love him anyway?" "I do." "Then you're either very brave or very foolish." He stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to the family. But know this, if you hurt my son, I will make your life very difficult." "If I hurt him, I'll deserve it." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Yes, I think you might be good for him after all." The meeting with her family was harder. Helen flew to Ethiopia with Hyun-Woo, and the moment they landed in Addis Ababa, her stomach twisted with nerves. Her parents had barely spoken to her since learning about him. Her brothers were protective and suspicious. The family dinner was awkward at first. Her father kept staring at Hyun-Woo like he was trying to determine if he was a threat. Her mother fussed with the food, avoiding eye contact. Her younger brothers whispered in Amharic, shooting him challenging looks. But Hyun-Woo surprised everyone. He'd learned basic Amharic phrases. He complimented her mother's cooking with genuine enthusiasm. He talked to her father about business with respect and intelligence. He played soccer with her brothers in the dusty street outside, laughing when they scored on him. By the end of the evening, her father pulled Helen aside. "This man," he said quietly in Amharic, "he loves you truly?" "Yes, Ababa, with everything he has." "And you love him, even knowing his world is dangerous?" "I love him because of who he is, not despite it." Her father sighed. "You were always the stubborn one, like me." He touched her cheek gently. "Be happy, my daughter. That's all I want." Her mother's acceptance came slower, but when she finally hugged Helen goodbye, she whispered, He looks at you like you hung the moon. Don't let him forget that. The wedding took place 3 months later in San Francisco, in a beautiful venue overlooking the bay. The ceremony was a perfect blend of their worlds, an Ethiopian priest and a Korean officiant, traditional dress for both cultures, food representing both countries. Guests from Seoul and Addis Ababa mixed with friends from Portland and Seattle. Helen wore a traditional Ethiopian Habesha chemise in white, embroidered with gold thread, with a Korean hanbok jacket over it. Hyun-Woo wore a hanbok in deep blue with Ethiopian fabric woven into the design. When she walked down the aisle to him, tears streaming down her face, he looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You're stunning," he whispered when she reached him. "I'm the luckiest man alive." "We're both lucky," she whispered back. They exchanged vows in both English and Korean, promising to love, protect, and cherish each other through whatever storms came. When they finally kissed as husband and wife, the room erupted in cheers from two cultures celebrating as one. The reception was joyous, dancing from both traditions, toasts in multiple languages, laughter and tears and celebration. Hyun-Woo barely left her side, his hand always finding hers, his eyes always seeking her out in the crowd. "I love you, Mrs. Park," he murmured during their first dance. "I love you too, Mr. Park." "Ready for forever? With you? Always." That night, in their honeymoon suite, they made love with the slow, deliberate passion of people who had all the time in the world. He worshipped her body like it was sacred, touching and kissing every inch of her until she was trembling with need. "You're mine now," he murmured against her skin. "My wife, my partner, my everything." "And you're mine," she gasped as he entered her. "My husband, my love, my home." They moved together in perfect rhythm, building slowly toward something beautiful and inevitable. When they finally reached their peak together, it felt like the universe aligning. 1 year later, they sat on the deck of their new home in Northern California, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The house was perfect. Large enough for the family they wanted to build. Private enough for safety. Beautiful enough to take her breath away every time she came home. Helen's hand rested on her slightly swollen belly, 5 months pregnant with their first child. Hyun-Woo's hand covered hers, his thumb tracing gentle circles. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. Deliriously. She leaned against him. "You? More than I ever thought possible." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Thank you." "For what?" "For opening your door that night, for saving my life, for loving me despite everything." His hand tightened on hers. "For giving me a reason to want to be better." "You were always good, Hyun-Woo. You just needed someone to see it." He turned her face to his and kissed her deeply, full of love and promise, and a future they'd built together. Inside the house, his men stood guard. The empire continued running. Danger still lurked in shadows. But here, in their home, with her in his arms and their baby growing between them, Hyun-Woo felt something he'd never felt before. Peace. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you more." "Impossible." She laughed, the sound carrying across their property, and he pulled her closer, both of them watching the sun sink below the horizon. Two worlds had collided that rainy night in Portland, a desperate man seeking help, a brave woman willing to give it. Neither had known that single moment would change everything. But now, wrapped in each other's arms with their whole future ahead of them, they understood something important. Sometimes the most dangerous decisions lead to the most beautiful destinations. Sometimes saving someone else saves you too. And sometimes, love is worth every risk. Helen had bandaged a Korean mafia boss, and he'd surrounded her house with 100 men. But somewhere between the danger and the passion, the fear and the fighting, they'd found something neither had been looking for, which was each other. Forever wasn't guaranteed. Their world would always have shadows. But as long as they had each other, as long as they faced everything together, they could handle anything. Hyun-Woo stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. The sunset blazed behind them as he kissed her, deep and slow and full of promises. "Let's go inside," he murmured, his eyes dark with desire even after a year of marriage. "I want to show my wife how much I love her." "Again?" She laughed. "We just did this morning. And I'll want you again tomorrow morning. And every morning after that for the rest of our lives." He swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the house. "That's what forever means, beautiful. Never getting enough of you." She wrapped her arms around his neck, her heart full, her life perfect in all its complicated, dangerous, beautiful glory. One rainy night, one desperate choice, one chance encounter that became the greatest love story neither of them saw coming. And as Hyun-Woo laid her gently on their bed, his hands and lips worshiping her body the way he did every single day, Helen knew with absolute certainty that she'd make the same choice again, every single time. Forever. If you couldn't stop listening to Helen and Hyun-Woo's dangerous love story, hit that subscribe button for more intense romances that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. And be honest in the comments. Would you have opened that door at 2:47 a.m., or would you have left him bleeding on your porch?